Don't lost your belt or you'll lose all your jiu-jitsu powers. Rickson Gracie won 450 matches and was never beaten. You can't get better at Nogi without training in the gi. These are some pretty silly jiu-jitsu myths, and believe it or not, that's not the end of the jiu-jitsu myth list. That's harder to say than I thought it would be, and what you're seeing now is probably like the fourth or fifth take of me trying to say it. But sometimes people believe really silly things, and I've got a fun list today of the weirdest, funniest, strangest myths about jiu-jitsu. And I hope you know by now that Epic Roll is proof that the myth that you have to spend a ton to get quality grappling apparel is a bunch of malarkey, and that's a phrase I don't think I've ever said before in my life. Epic Roll has the best gis, rash guards, fight shorts, t-shirts, hoodies, joggers, and more. And even though their stuff is the highest quality you can get, it won't break the bank. Plus, you can take an additional 15% off your order at epicrollbjj.com when you use the code podcast15. Don't believe what you hear when people say quality stuff needs to be expensive. Check out Epic Roll and don't waste more money on stuff that wasn't designed specifically for jiu-jitsu. Give Epic Roll a follow on Instagram at epicrollbjj and visit epicrollbjj.com. epicrollbjj.com, coupon code podcast15. Now let's go myth busting. You can be forgiven if you're under the impression that the Gracie family saw a need for a new martial art, decided to make one, and invented jiu-jitsu to revolutionize the world. The Gracie family is sort of mythologized in martial arts, and that's part of why most people believe the version of events that I just laid out. However, it's not entirely accurate. It is true that the Gracies changed martial arts forever. It is true that their system of grappling and self-defense completely changed combat sports. It is not true that they invented jiu-jitsu from scratch. They didn't even invent the name. The very short version of the very long story is that Carlos and Elio Gracie learned judo from Mitsuya Maeda and adapted it to be the jiu-jitsu that we know today. Judo at the time was commonly known as Kano jiu-jitsu, so the Gracies just dropped the Kano, added Gracie to the front, and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was born. The Gracies changed some techniques and added some things based on their own experimentation with the judo that they had learned, especially the Newaza or ground techniques, and their big focus was on smaller athletes being able to defeat larger ones using these ground techniques. They definitely revolutionized the sport. They didn't invent it out of thin air, and to ignore the massive contribution of judo to jiu-jitsu is a big error. I talked about it in the last myth, the Gracie emphasis on the small man beating the big man. It is very true that someone who trains jiu-jitsu can easily defeat someone who isn't trained, and there are limitations to this. Jiu-jitsu does not make you invincible, unfortunately. If you weigh 150 pounds and you get in a street fight with a guy who weighs 250 pounds and is decently athletic, you might still be in for a rough time. Size also matters in sport jiu-jitsu. There's a reason the absolute division is not usually won by someone from the lowest weight classes. It happens, but strength matters and size also matters. BJ Penn had the mindset that he was going to go win 155-pound belt, then move up to win the 170 belt, then move up to win 185, and win until he was UFC heavyweight champion of the world. His mindset was that his technique was better than everyone else's, so size doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it does. When two people are both skilled, even if one is more skilled than the other, if one person has a huge size and strength advantage, that will come into play. BJ is a legend in the fact that he lost a close decision to Lyoto Machida when Machida outweighed him by like 40 pounds is crazy, but size does matter, especially for us mortals not named BJ Penn. I am really tempted to leave this section incredibly short and say it does. It absolutely does. It just does. But I don't think that would be very satisfying for you, the viewer, so I'll dig a little deeper. If you train in boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, you immediately have a massive advantage over an untrained opponent in a self-defense situation in the street. How many times have you seen the free trial class guy come in and get absolutely ragdolled by white belts? Not even experienced grapplers, 6-month white belts. The ability to control and manipulate an opponent is like a superpower. That being said, if you're in a self-defense situation and someone has a weapon, you better flee as fast as possible if that is an option. But in an unarmed attack, Jiu-Jitsu is the best thing for you. I actually posted a few videos on Instagram recently showing Jiu-Jitsu working for self-defense, so if you aren't already, make sure you're following me on Instagram. Jiu-Jitsu is not karate. It will actually work in a fight. This myth is an old school thought process wherein you're only really going to get better at one aspect of jiu-jitsu if you train both aspects of jiu-jitsu. I would argue, however, that at this point, Nogi and Gi jiu-jitsu are wildly different. I wouldn't go so far as to say they are completely different sports, but I do think that they are so different that you cannot approach them the same. Basically, I'm saying the exact opposite of this myth. Breaking grips on your gi and defending lapel chokes has zero benefit to someone who only competes in the gi. There's a reason why you see teams like B Team or New Wave who only compete or train in Nogi and don't do both. For the beginner and hobbyist, I think you should roll in both, and I personally enjoy both gi and Nogi. I just competed in a Nogi sub-only fight. You can watch that video here if you missed it. And in the lead up to that, I still trained both gi and Nogi because 1, I like them both, and 2, I'm not an elite competitor who needs to only focus on one, even if I like to pretend I am an elite competitor. More time on the mat will make you a better grappler, regardless if it's gi or Nogi. But the idea that you can't really get good at Nogi if you don't also train in the gi, it just isn't true. Rickson Gracie is on the Mount Rushmore of Jiu-Jitsu, and he is a living legend. He was not 450-0 in fights. The man himself is sticking to this tale, saying, quote, "Every tournament I entered after I turned 18, weight class or open weight division, I submitted every match and I had never lost. I entered Luta Livre tournaments back when Holes was excited about it. I never lost either." He also said, "Sambo tournaments in Brazil and in the United States, I also never lost. Street fights against guys that were really tough, professionals, or street fights with surfers, fights with Luta Livre guys, jiu-jitsu tournaments, seminars, any other situation. Every time I faced an opponent, he was submitted. I never won by points, and counting very superficially, it's at least 450 fights, so I set that as my record." You could dispute this based just on the logic of, come on bro, 450 fights? But you don't have to, because Rickson lost to judo black belt and world sambo champion Ron Tripp at the US Sambo Championships in Norman, Oklahoma in 1993, and that's a matter of record. If Rickson is saying sambo wins count towards his 450, then a sambo loss has to count towards his 0-2. Did he lose more than that? There's no other record of any other loss that I personally can find, and the 450 seems inflated by roles at seminars and in training and street fights with untrained guys, but who am I to call Rickson a liar? I hate this one. If you wash your belt, you will not lose all of your jiu-jitsu powers. Your jiu-jitsu magic will not be washed away. Do you know what will be washed away? MRSA and ringworm. Your belt is almost always in contact with the mat. The mat is where bacteria live. Just because you likely aren't sweating directly onto your belt like you are onto your gi, doesn't mean your belt is any cleaner than your gi after training. Wash your belt, wash it. And if all your jiu-jitsu skills can be undone by one load of wash, then did you really have much skill to begin with? This really isn't jiu-jitsu specific, it applies to all sports, but just because someone is really good at doing something, it doesn't mean they are really good at teaching something. If you were presented with the choice between training under a world champion or someone who isn't a world champion, it seems like a very obvious pick to choose the world champion. But it's important to remember that not everyone teaches or coaches well just because they can do something well. A better metric would be to look at how many students have also become world champions, not just the coach themselves. There will be great competitors who are also great instructors. Big Lachlan Giles fan over here. But there will also be competitors who are amazing athletes, but you'd struggle to learn from. Competition results a great teacher they do not make. The best way to get in shape is jiu-jitsu. I am biased, but I am also right. The best way to get in shape for jiu-jitsu is more jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu should be part of a balanced life. I like to think of myself as a hybrid athlete. I love jiu-jitsu, I love hockey, I love running and triathlon and cycling, I love lifting. Jiu-jitsu is a part of what keeps me fit, but if I had to cut everything else and I could only keep one, I would keep jiu-jitsu. This one applies mostly to new people or people who haven't started training yet, but have an interest in the sport. The idea that you need to be in shape first is just wrong, and people who are considering training probably aren't enjoying this fine video, so please make sure you share it with your friends. I think there's a share button down here you can click. Jiu-jitsu is easier if you're in shape, yes, but it's never actually going to be super easy. So if you're waiting to be in shape to make it easier when you start, you are on a fool's errand. Just start now and let the fitness take care of itself. As I have discussed previously, jiu-jitsu can be for everyone. Do you think you're too old to start? You're not. You can do jiu-jitsu until you're 120 years old. You might not win an adult black belt world championship, but you can be on the mat training every day of your life until you give up the ghost. Think you're too small? You're not, and I guarantee someone smaller than you is training. Think you're too big? Same answer. If you want to train, you can. No matter what you look like or what shape you're in, just get on the mat. Again, this one is probably aimed at people who aren't training yet, so make sure you hit that share button and let's get more people on the mat, because the more people that train jiu-jitsu, the better the world will be. So there you have it, 9 jiu-jitsu myths that we should all stop believing. What did I leave out? Please let me know your favorite jiu-jitsu myths down in the comments. If you watched this far into the video, you are an absolute legend, and I thank you for hanging out with me. Please smash that subscribe button so that we can hang out again soon. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.